Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, very excited to welcome first-time guest, although I have been a fan of his work for some time. You could see his tweets on Twitter, but associated with the Strickland, our friends at the Strickland. He does fantastic film breakdowns for them. He also writes for them occasionally, including recently about Earl the Pearl Monroe, which I'd love to ask him about before we get out of here. A friend of the pod, even though he's never been on the pod, I'd like to say, Ben Ritholtz. Ben, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm honored to be on. I've been enjoying and following your work for some time, and just got in on the content game, if you will, last December, I would say. And
so it's been a year almost.
It's been almost a year. Yeah. I think I reached out to you in December of last year when I was just getting started.
Okay.
And just to ask you, advice, what you thought, because I've been following you for a while, and you were so supportive. So thank you for that. And it's been a fun ride ever since. It's kind of shocking how many people care to see what I have to say about the game, but it's been a lot of fun.
Well, no, I that's a good place to start, because what I don't know, your breakdowns actually remind me. They're the closest I've seen anybody remind me to JB, which is like, way back in the day, the original Knicks Film School account, when Jeffrey Balone would just break things down in kind of just like the simplest, like layman's terms, but at the same time, you always felt like you were learning something. And whenever I see your threads, I'm always picking up on something or another that, like, man, may not have seen that, or I may not have thought of that. And yeah, man, you're just really good at it. And a big part of that is you are committed in that. Like, I feel like I don't scroll on Twitter that much anymore, but when I do, I feel like I usually see something that you have put out about a game, man. It's give yourself a pat on the back. You've been sticking with it.
If I wasn't enjoying it, I wouldn't do it, because as we talked about before, I do have a day job, but it's so fun. I do it any break I have. I love watching it and getting it out there. So it's been nothing but fun. As soon as it doesn't get fun, I don't think I would do it anymore.
I think that's a good MO. So yeah, let's talk about this team. Because again, you do rewatch the games, you do put out a lot of film. Going into the Indiana game, which we're recording this on Tuesday night, so it was last night for us, I don't want to say like I was utterly baffled by this team, but I was trying to figure out the way out of it, because it felt like they were in something, and I was trying to figure out the way out. And I knew it had something to do with Randall, but I couldn't really. I would say sometimes when a team's not going right, the answer is so obvious. Either like they lack talent, or just like one person and maybe is playing poorly, or it was obvious in feel, but it wasn't obvious to me, at least in like solution. So I'm curious. Let's start here. Like, before the Indiana game, where was your mindset in terms of like this team and like what ailed it?
What's so unique about trying to understand this team is that it's really not one team. And I think that's kind of where it starts. And even with most NBA teams, you have, let's say, player A and then player A minus, where they stagger the minutes. You think of the Celtics or the Blazers. Most NBA teams, they have two guys that they want on the floor at all times, and you can assess how those lineups look. And let's say there are 4 or 5 lineups to look at, but it's a more cohesive unit to kind of analyze. Whereas with the Knicks, it's such a uniquely bifurcated team where you have these two units and these two lineups to study, and they've been polar opposites to start the year. So you're not really analyzing one team, you're analyzing two. And obviously when it came to coming into this game, I mean, the story was clearly, how does this first unit pick it up and figure it out? And I think they did to some extent. I think the first quarter was encouraging. Parts of the third quarter were encouraging. The way Julius played down the stretch with a bench unit, which was kind of a mix and match unit that we haven't seen a ton of was encouraging. But that is the challenge of kind of assessing where this team is as we're moving through the season.
Yeah, it's a great call. Yeah, and it's, look, you may tune into the occasional post game where it's like it's not a Knicks Film School post game live stream unless somebody's calling for, or multiple somebodies are calling for somebody to be benched, and but I love the bench unit, and I kind of, my probably too convenient response has been just like, how about we let the starters try to figure it out and then leave the bench being the best bench unit in the NBA. That said, the concept of staggering is something that I think a lot of people have wanted from Tibbs, probably before he came to New York. I'm sure Minnesota people and maybe even Chicago people wanted more of that. And we did see that to end the last two games, one of which was a success. The other one, not so much. I don't know if you were to ask me like right now, and I'm just thinking of this, you talking about like the two teams, like what is the Knicks' best lineup? It's a question that I got before the season, and it's a question I've obviously gotten like throughout the season. And I genuinely, do we have an answer? Like, do you think there's an answer? And then like, if you had to answer it, like what would your answer be? I don't even know.
I don't know either. It's so hard because as great as the second unit is, and it is great, and it's been great, and I have no reason to think it won't be great going forward. I don't think there's anything fluky about it. It's been basically a season plus now, where they've been an excellent bench unit. You always do have to factor in the fact that they are not playing against starters all the time.
Yeah, we like to forget that.
Yeah, and especially defensively. I know we like how they fly around, and they do. They fly around. They scramble so well. They communicate well. But Obi Toppin is going to have a lot more trouble with Bridges than he is with whoever he was the backup, McDaniels, or whoever he was guarding.
It was. And someone not good.
Yeah, it's a totally different story for a guy like that who's still learning the nuances of NBA defense. And as frustrated as we get with Julius Randle defensively at times, he's got seasons worth of understanding and in some ways a better physical ability than Obi does on the defensive end. It's just a whole different ballgame. Like the gap that exists would lessen if we switched who they were playing against. There's no question. And I'll add to that I think it's a uniquely built team because you have Julius on the top, and then you have 8 guys that you could basically call on any night the second best player on the team. Literally 8 guys. There's no team like that in the NBA that I can think of. And so trying to construct one lineup that is the best lineup is hard to do. And that's the reason that Tibbs is always just playing the hot hand and
why nobody's ever happy. Because there's always people, because whoever doesn't play, unless they win like going away, right? If they either lose or they like win, but like it's ugly, there will people be like, well, why didn't you play right? Yeah, no, that's a great call.
There's no obvious best lineup on this team. These guys they're all basically getting paid the same too, right? I mean, other than Julius, it's like a $10 to $20 million range player for like the next 8-9 guys. RJ hopefully graduates from that. Yeah. He'll certainly make more than that. But right now, with the inconsistency that we're seeing, is he a $20 billion a year player? Not really. No. I mean, if we're being realistic about it.
He's not. Is he playing like? Let's put us. We're going to sidetrack. This will be the first of our many sidetracks. You like the economics of the NBA. I know you think about this stuff as well as I do. Like, what is a $20 million a year player now? I mean, it's Mikal Bridges, right? Because he just signed for 22 and a half a year. Lonzo Ball is a $20 million a year player. I'm trying to think. Clint Capella is a $20 million a year player. Like RJ, is he as good as those guys right this second? There are certainly nights where he looks it.
That's the thing with him. And the bad is so bad with him. The bad is worse with him than it is with any of those guys. And in the first half last night,
there's a floor.
It gets ugly with him sometimes. And then there are times where he looks like he'll far exceed those guys because of his, you think about a guy like Bridges. I mean, the guys you named, they're all kind of like the elite role player, different roles, but kind of the elite role player kind of.
Fred VanVleet,
whether it's
took a discount,
but, center, 3-and-D wing. RJ, you're hoping becomes 3-and-D plus creation skills, shot making on a different level. But I mean, right now, realistically, is he that? I mean, we're going to see this year, but the point remains that like there's no obvious number two, and there's no obvious closing lineup, and it's a hard team to figure out. Like I don't envy Tibbs trying to figure the lineups out as he goes here, because on one hand, it's a luxury to have 10 guys as good. It's deeper than the average team, but like the 2 to 4 or 2 to 5 is not nearly as obvious as it is with an average NBA team.
So I'm gonna correct you. There are teams that we see every year that there's a number 1 and then a 2 through 10 that are kind of interchangeable, and those teams usually suck. They're usually very bad. That is what, but at the same time, I say that somewhat facetiously because clearly there is the average talent level of our 2 to whether you want, I guess, who are we including? So Rose, quickly, RJ, Burks, OB, who am I forgetting? Evan, Kemba. Oh, and then the center. So it's it's Julius and then 7 guys who play the 1 through 4 spots and then the 3 centers. So yeah, God, that's one thing I keep talking about, kicking a can down the road, is like what happens when all the centers are healthy on the 12th of Never.
I've seen you dodge the Mitch question a couple times now on post games.
I don't even know. I've lost the ability to have a conversation about Mitchell Robinson. And that's not to say I'm like mad at him or I think he's like bad. I just don't even know. I don't even know what to say at this point.
He is a strange case.
He's a strange case.
I don't know if I was his agent, if I would have recommended putting on dozens of pounds in a contract year and trying to figure out my body. It was kind of a weird choice, I think. And as much as I think I understand why he did it, and I saw in his press conference today, he was explaining that he's still adjusting to that. I mean, he's got to be on the court and he's got to be making an impact. And even when he's been on the court and I think relatively healthy, there's something to be said about the fact that Tibbs is basically closing with the other center almost every night. Yeah. Almost every night.
Beginning of the season, he was close when Mitch was on his. It seemed like something was different early in the year, and I don't know. I may need to go back and rewatch those games because I may be imagining it at this point. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, no, I mean it's going to be a hard conversation. I know people got really excited about the idea of what Mitch would have meant in the Atlanta series. Yeah. I think there is some degree of truth to that. I think it's probably being overstated because I think while the ceiling of Mitch in some ways like combines Taj Gibson and Nerlens Noel, the reality is that Mitch has never done that consistently. There hasn't been a long stretch of games in Mitch's career where I've said, like, this guy's figured it out as an anchored big. Like he's anticipating, he's in the right spots there were games last year where I just felt like Noel and Taj were giving us better defensive decision-making, anticipation. Like Mitch physically has gifts that exceed both those guys. Certainly Taj Gibson, although Taj Gibson's feet are like divine. The way that guy moves his feet is unbelievable. But like in terms of like defensive, physical gifts, Mitchell Robinson is elite. But kind of combining that with anticipation, like I always say to fans who are getting like, if you watch Rudy Gobert play defense in a game and understand, like there's a level of understanding, anticipation, knowing the actions, knowing the personnel, like it is a totally different ball game and level. And so, I mean, then it just comes down to how much is it worth and how much you want to invest. And then you add on top of that the physical issues he's having now, and it's becoming a thing.
I wonder, the Gobert point is there have been a few things that have like, I've hated to have to explicitly say, but like when people are like, oh, his ceiling is Rudy Gobert. Like, yes, technically there is a world, right, where Mitchell Robinson evolves into Rudy Gobert. But like Rudy Gobert, there's a reason why this man has won, what is it, 2 or 3, whatever it is, Defensive Player of the Year awards. Like, yeah, it's that means you're the best in the whole league, and you're really not bad at anything for as much as people pick apart what he has done at times in the playoffs. In any case, yeah, I wonder for the Knicks if it's the years less than the dollars that is potentially scaring them. And we still don't. I don't think we have any firm reporting of like whether or not they've offered money and Mitch's camp has turned it down, or whether like he's waiting to get more on the, like, I don't know. But whatever, that would be okay. So we've again gotten sidetracked. So back to your point about the all these equal guys. Let me ask you this, because you had a great thread on RJ today and how he kind of bounced back after what was a really, and it wasn't just missing shots. It was a bad, stretch of 4 or 5 games. This is probably going to be a stupid question, right? But like, RJ still has the highest ceiling of this team, or do you think RJ still has the highest ceiling of this team? Because I'll just come out and say it. I waver at times. That's all. I'm just going to say I waver.
I waver. To me, like, it's hard. I mean, I guess Julius Randle's an example. So, I mean, but he's done. I mean, it's hard to imagine a guy that sometimes looks that bad becoming a consistently great player. That's hard. I mean, it's just, I think the shot has really improved. And I
believe in the shot. I still believe in the shot. I think
he's going to make catch and shoot threes. Do I think he's ever going to be a guy that you can throw the ball to and say, we need a bucket, go create it? I waver. And I think probably the realistic, like most likely result here, if he continues to work, which he certainly will, and his attitude is great and all that. Like, I think you're looking at a elite 3-and-D guy when he starts putting it together defensively every night, because we've seen the flashes of great defensive play and we've seen some bad flashes defensively. A really great 3-and-D guy who gives with a plus, where like he can give you secondary pick and roll action. You run those pistol actions for him occasionally where he can get to the rim. I think he's a much better passer than he's shown this year. I think that's actually taking a step back in some ways this season.
I completely agree with you. He's shown flashes of the passes. Yeah. He has made some passes that will be like, oh, there it is. There's the playmaking that was like people talked about before he got taken 3rd in the draft.
Yeah, exactly. And but we haven't seen it really blossom yet. So I mean, I don't see a perennial all-star. I know some do, and people are going to say that I'm putting a hard ceiling. I'm not. I wouldn't be shocked. That's not what I see when I watch this player as much as I've watched him. And I don't think that's a terrible result if he becomes what I'm describing. I know people hope for more, but I don't. That's a really, really, really valuable player.
Well, Lonzo Ball. I'm not, listen, just before anybody starts yelling and screaming, I'm not comparing RJ Barrett to Lonzo Ball. I'm not saying that's his ceiling. I think his ceiling is higher than Lonzo Ball. I want to be very, very clear about that. But Lonzo Ball just got paid $20 million a year. And he is depending on how you feel about Nikola Vucevic, who's an interesting player. He's the 3rd 3.5 best player on a team that is currently looking like it's going to, I don't know, make some noise in the playoffs, maybe for a round. No one's going to ever say he's underpaid. No one's ever going to say he's overpaid, Lonzo Ball. I think like any team in the league at this point would probably trade for, almost any team in the league probably trade for that contract. He's not a high usage guy. He's not a high assist guy. Pretty efficient overall, hitting threes. Like it. So you can, my point in making this comparison, which again, I'm not really comparing these two players, is to be like, you don't have to check all the boxes to be an incredibly valuable player on a very good team. And I think the question is like, I'm I'm yet to engage in conversations about, well, what does a team where RJ Barrett's the best player look like? Neither here nor there. To me, it's more like, if he's your third best, like, can he be the third best player on a championship team? And people will hear that and ask and be like, oh, you're a hater, Macri. And then I think about the top 75 list that just came out, and how guys who made the top 75 of all time were third best players on championship teams, and it's like, so what is RJ Barrett going to make the top 100 list in 25 years? Like, is that where we're talking about? This is where I struggle. And, before we move on from him, the one thing I would like to always point out, I wish he would get to the foul line more. It drives me nuts that he doesn't force more calls. I just take that for what it's worth. That's all. I don't know if that bugs you as well. I figured I'd bring it up.
No, so I wrote about it last year, and it actually came from something that you wrote in terms of comparing him to Jimmy Butler, or at least looking at those two players.
Who lives at the fucking line.
And right. And Jimmy told him, right? I mean, we saw it. Like, Jimmy told RJ Barrett, like, dude, you gotta initiate some contact on me, or else I'm just going to take the ball from you. Yes. And we see, I mean, how many times did you see it last night where he's in transition and he doesn't really make a move, and he just kind of holds the ball there, and it's jump ball or turnover. Like, yeah, he's got to figure out a little bit of craft around the rim where he draws more contact and finishes better. And that probably, if we assume the shot has come along and will be, somewhere, let's say a floor of 38% from three, which I think is conservative. I think it could be better, but let's say that's a floor. I mean, the efficiency at the rim is going to be the big difference for him. It's the
bellwether. Game. It's the efficiency at the rim and how often he gets to the line. Absolutely the bellwether. All right, let's shift to a guy who knows exactly what the fuck he is, and seems to be having some fun with it right now, is Immanuel Quickley. And I want to even be more explicit. When I said a minute ago, like, I doubt which Knick player has the highest ceiling. At this point, for me to be like, oh yes, RJ Barrett definitely has a higher ceiling than Immanuel Quickley, that feels disingenuous to what we're watching at the moment in a league where horizontal spacing is it the most important skill? I don't know. What's the more important? I guess if you're a big wing and you can create shots, that's still kind of what it's going to come down to in a game, end of a tight playoff game, right? But
it's partially dependent on the spacing, though. It limits your ability, even a big wing, it limits your ability to do that if you can't. If you can't create space behind the arc, for sure.
Yeah. And like, again, I hate to like be so, narrow conversations about players down to like one or two like ultra specific things, but like, he's a small guard. And again, this goes back to what you were saying. He is defending primarily against backups now, but my goodness, he looks like he is not a guy you're going to be able to play off the floor defensively. And I would go even a step further than that. I think he's a good defensive player. How good can he be at whatever he is, 6'2" or 6'3" and whatever he weighs? I don't know that, but like, and then you get into like, well, okay, so how much playmaking can he actually do? And is he? We saw him out there closing in a key moment with Alec Burks. They were the two guys. And granted, the offense still flowed more through Burks, but which we saw last year. There's something there. It's like, I know you've been watching the NBA for as long as I have, and when you see it, when you see it, and something's going on with this kid. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
No, I agree with basically everything you said. The defensive improvement, he's always been, from the first time I watched him and like broke down film on him and put out a thread on him. He is extraordinarily aware on the defensive end. Like, for a rookie last year, it was really a sight to behold. Like, in terms of understanding scheme, personnel, who he's guarding, what teams are trying to do. He's switching out. He's scram switching from day one. Like, this guy just got it from the moment he entered the league, which is really rare. And if there were limitations last year in terms of size and strength, and I think those have been somewhat mitigated this year. He spoke about it in his press conference. There was before practice today or last night. I don't remember. where he said, no, I'm stronger. And and he even said last year I struggled a little bit because I was put next to Derrick Rose and I had to guard twos, and I struggled with that a little bit. But this year I feel more comfortable, and that's what I've seen as well. Is he just seems to be? He's
not Trey Burke, or I don't know who else you want. Someone of that ilk.
He's not Kemba Walker. He's not
Kemba Walker. He's not Kemba Walker at all. Steph Curry is like Steph Curry again. Has Steph Curry gotten targeted in finals games by like LeBron James? Like, yeah, that happens occasionally. But like Steph Curry's always been able to hold his own for the most part.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I quickly has added length to that kind. Like he can deflect. He gets deflections. He's long. He pressures. He's confident pressuring full court right now, which I love. I think it changes. One of the reasons like the whole pace of the game changes right when the bench comes in is because that guy just gets up in you right away.
Yes.
And all of a sudden there's a little bit of added pressure on the opposing offense, which the starting unit does not provide at the point of attack right now, which is a big problem. Honestly, if there's any, I'm sorry to sidetrack him, but if there's any problem I have right now with the starting unit, because I think that Fournier is going to shoot the hell out of it over the next 10 games.
Completely agree with you.
Guy who has always shot the hell out of it. I have
career sample size. Like at some point it doesn't lie.
Yeah,
like go look at his numbers.
It's like people doubting quickly shot is going to come around. Like he's been a good shooter his whole life. He's not going to stop being a good shooter. Evan Fournier is going to hit shots. He's going to hit shots. Even it's not even a usage thing. He had a lower usage in Boston when he went over there, and he still shot.
His percentage went up. Yeah,
he shot the hell out of it. So it's not a usage thing that he's not comfortable. Like there is some chemistry that needs to be worked out. I think they're working it through. But like ultimately, if he made 7-8 more shots this year from three, we wouldn't be talking about him so much. Like I just think the shot's going to come around. I'm not as worried about him offensively, or even the unit offensively. I think it's a good offensive unit. But in terms of not having any point of attack aggression at all,
but doesn't this get back to the stagger conversation? I think if you got Tibbs some true serum and alone in a room with a cocktail or something, he'd tell you never in a million years would I contemplate ending a game, a big game, close game with these guys on the court, right?
I'm not sure Rose changes that much. I think Rose is okay. I think Quickly brings a different defensive element than even Derrick Rose. I do. And I don't know. And it goes back to the lineup question. This team is, if there's a flaw in construction, it's a bit small and a bit thin. When I say thin, I mean physically thin, not
no, I know.
At the point guard and guards and wings. Like RJ.
Oh, look who they drafted. Again, everybody's shouting, we need to see Quentin Grimes right now. Easy. You don't need to see him today or tomorrow. But like that, there's a reason
that comment so many times in the last 10 days.
There's a reason rookies get signed to 4-year contracts. Like it doesn't often happen automatically right away. Anyway. Yeah. Continue. I'm sorry.
No, you were speaking about they drafted guys that have a little bit more physicality to them. Absolutely. But the 10-man unit that they're going to play this year, barring injury, and they should play this year, barring injury.
Yes.
That is a bit of like, there's not a ton of real defensive minded. They prioritize pull-up shooting and the ability to knock down open looks. And it came a little bit at the expense. I mean, Reggie Bullock, that's what he was. He was a solid wing defender. That's what he was. And even Elfrid Payton, for all the hate, most of it deserved.
He was just a space cadet every other play. He wasn't a good
team defender. Kemba Walker is a better team defender.
And defender easily.
So is Fournier. However, where you see it, and I at some point I'll write about this, because there have been 2 or 3 plays a game where the Knicks panic help on Kemba's man and somebody's open. And that Elfrid, as space cadet as he was off ball, two back doors a game, didn't always get back in transition, didn't always communicate. You didn't have to worry one-on-one about overhelping on Elfrid Payton's man.
Brogdon's not carrying Elfrid Payton into the paint and being on shoot over it.
So there were a couple plays on Brogdon, and this is why I was screaming.
And he's big, though. We should say Brogdon's a big,
really good and really strong. I didn't understand why Tibbs stuck with Kemba on him as long as he did. I thought he could have stuck him on Holiday for portions of that game and gotten away with it. Yep. But he wanted to leave Kemba on him. And you could just see it. Like everyone on that unit is trained or has been coached to be very aware of who Kemba is guarding and where they are on the floor. And that does have a trickle-down effect on your defense, and that has made an impact. So it's not as simple as Kemba and Fournier are so much worse than Bullock or an Elf.
It's an oversimplification. It's an
oversimplification, but there is, and there are factors here in terms of both those guys' lack of physicality that is having a trickle down, even though they're both very intelligent defensive players and they're mostly in the right spots and they mostly help where they need to help. Kemba's drawing charges, like they're not bad defensive players, but as a unit, your overall physicality, your overall strength has been diminished. And I do think that is affecting the team defense. And I thought it was much better last night overall, although Brogdon had his way at times and Steven Sabonis had his way at times. But I thought generally it was better. And I think it will get better. And they moved up 8 spots in the rankings last night, I think, in one game.
I feel like we're 13, 14 games into the season. That was insane how much they jumped. But
84 points is not what you get often anymore. But I do think that's real. And again, it goes to the lineup questions. What do you do with that? I do think the starting lineup will stabilize. I think it should even maybe be a positive lineup by the end of the year if they stick with it. I'm not like panicking, but there are real structural kind of questions and issues that they're dealing with.
And just to go back for a second, just made me think of it. Like that's where I think we maybe not me and you, but some people have gotten a bit of the fool's gold with like, well, it's okay because we have Mitch. So it doesn't matter what the perimeter defenders, because, look at Utah and they have, substandard perimeter defenders and like Gobert. Well, again, yes, that's a one-man walking defense. And you know how many of those guys there are in the NBA? Joel Embiid's pretty good too, but there's not many of those guys. Back to quickly for a second. So sorry. Listen, you've listened to the pod before. You know how I like to roll. I'm all over the fucking place. For me, the thing that I not get annoyed by, but like when conversations about is someone a point guard versus are they not a point guard? Like it's so often I feel like focuses on the wrong things. Like does this person have like elite vision or like are they delivering the pass like exactly where it needs? To me, it's like, and maybe this is an oversimplification, but just like, how do you think the game? Do you make mistakes? Like if a team puts the ball in your hands for however many pick and rolls, like a game, like, are you going to make the right read? Are you going to make the right play? And I feel like quickly this year, I don't know, maybe I'm watching with like orange and blue colored glasses, but I just don't feel like he's made many incorrect reads, plays. I feel like if there's a pass to be made, he makes it at the correct time. He's baiting guys into situations that allow him to make passes. And like, if you can do that and you could shoot and you could defend a little bit, like what I know he doesn't get all the way to the rim, but I'll be damned if the short mid-range stuff doesn't look also pretty darn good. I just don't know. So where is the thing where I'm supposed to be like, oh no, that's why he can't play, 32 minutes a game and be a really good starter in the back. Like that's where I'm at right now with him. And I don't know. I'm excited and I want to see where it goes.
No, I think that's fair. To me, what remains to be seen is can he consistently access the paint against elite defenders if he was the primary ball handler in a unit?
Because if the focus is on him.
When he closes games, I think the best perimeter defender is guarding Derrick Rose. Mm-hmm. And I think probably either the second or third best perimeter defender is guarding Quickly. And Quickly isn't really just like running. We're not seeing like high pick and roll Quickly like every possession, every other possession. Like it's mostly, he's mostly still playing off the catch. If he gets a switch, he'll attack the switch, and he's gotten really good at that.
Yep. Yes.
But we haven't seen like a guy who can consistently run a pick and roll and create a great shot. I think as a secondary player right now, he's becoming better at that. I think his burst is clearly improved. I think his handle's clearly improved. Like it's better this year. He's in the paint. He's leveraging his shot, using hesitation moves to access the paint. And then you're right. He's making the right pass, and he's shown that Derrick Rose kind of like jump pass where he freezes the defense or he jumps and then he's able to kind of spray it and find different guys, whether it's cross court or the other night he faked a cross court pass and then ended up dropping it off to Mitch for a dunk. Yeah. Like he's starting to manipulate defenses with that, and it's a massive step. And like I'm not saying he can't get there. I'm just saying he's still put in context, like very advantageous context where they're not geared up on him yet because of who he's playing with and who's guarding him and the situations that he's attacking. And I think the question remains to be seen, like if we're really geared up to stop Emmanuel quickly, if a starting defensive unit is geared up to stop Emmanuel quickly, like how much could he do? And I still think that's a very fair question to ask in terms of the ceiling. But what we've seen, like just tremendous strides, and a player who is like every time he speaks, you're just like this is like perfect. Like every comment, every press conference, like it's just there's so much positive energy out of him. It's like overwhelming how wonderful it is to root for a player.
But it makes you think of the character and the work ethic, and that's why, like, if a guy like Fred Van Vliet, I always forget his name. Van Vliet can go from an undrafted player who bounced around between the G League to a guy who's a borderline all-star because he just worked his fucking balls off to get to this point. Then Emmanuel Quickley, former top 10 recruit, Kentucky, like first round draft pick, the whole thing. If his work ethic, like where again, I'm not trying to sit here and be like, oh, Emmanuel Quickley is going to be the guy who's the perennial all-star. That's not where this is going. But like, I wonder. It's like there's definitely somewhere like we know he's not like Trae Young, you saw what he did in college, and like that guy's going to lead the league in scoring, if not this year, then soon. Or a player of that ilk. But like, is there a level down from that where, again, if it's a team that's constructed in a certain way, and maybe I don't know how many of these players would be part of this, but like, I don't know. It's just something I'm excited to see from him moving forward. Before we get out of here, I'll turn it over to you. Give me something that we haven't talked about that you're interested in, that you're curious about, that you're I don't know, that you're mad at, anything, a player, a thing.
Looking up at the roster here.
So many options.
We haven't talked Obi.
You mentioned Obi briefly, and I was like, yeah, I guess I'll leave it there. We can talk about Obi more. I love Obi Toppin.
He's been like unbelievably exciting, and the angle that I'm starting to develop, I'm hopefully going to write about it soon, but I'd love to talk about it with you a bit. Is I think the easy explanation for the improvement, and there's been clear improvement, is he works hard and he's gotten better. The funny part is, like, all the work that he put in on the shot has made it tanked.
Hasn't made it three since the second game of the fucking season. Anything, including free throws, it's been a disaster. Honestly, it's been a disaster in terms of the outside shot. Like, it could not have gone worse this year. Yeah. And it's absolutely incredible that despite that, there's no question that he's making 20 times the impact he made last year, despite shooting worse than he did last year. And he was a bad shooter last year. Well, he was the only player who saw court time last year. Again, let's put Peyton into his own category. He's the only player who saw court. Well, actually, no, Kevin Knox saw court time last year. But like, there were moments. Post Rose. Like, he was the only player who saw court time where you were like, this person probably should not be out there right now.
This is a below average NBA player. Yes,
this is a below average NBA player. And if he was not a first round, if he wasn't a top 10 pick of Leon Rose, he would probably not be playing.
Yeah, right. So I think the easy explanation everyone uses between rookie and sophomore year is they've improved. I think with Obi, there is definitely some of that. I think the handle is, and the speed with which he's catching and going and using that handle is making a huge difference. The dunk he had last night, the second one.
Oh my God.
The second one,
I know.
He blocked it off his knee somehow. It was a terrible pass. And it's just like so quick, one dribble, he's gone, and he's dunking on you. Like, that is new. That is improved. I think more of the explanation here, though, goes to they're actually letting him screen and roll. Yeah. Like, and the stats back it up. You look at the amount of possessions he's screening. You look at his pick, his roll pop ratio, which Basketball Index puts out. There are drastic changes in terms of how they're using this guy. The crazy thing is, we all knew this is how they should be using him because that's why they drafted him, because that's how he played in college. And he somehow became a stretch four, like trying to figure out how to play that position last year.
It reminded me of like Sabonis. When Sabonis came out, we knew what Sabonis was in college.
That's a great comp. I haven't thought of that. That's a great
He went
comp.
to Oklahoma City and they told him, go stand the fuck over there. And he was terrible.
And it just made no, and like he's playing Taj Gibson a ton last year. Taj was one of the most frequent screeners in the league last year.
Yeah.
Now he is a very good screener, Taj Gibson, but he's not a vertical threat. Like we saw him last night. He's very good on the short roll. He's a good passer. If he catches deep, he's a good finisher. But like that's not a guy that needs to be one of the highest percentage screeners in the league when he's out there, especially when he plays with Obi Toppin, who like the whole reason he got drafted this high was because he's an elite screen roll finisher and like can show those passing chops that I think he has. Like, so it's just interesting that I think they've figured out that like the reason they drafted him is how they should utilize him. And they're running all sorts of sets for him now. You saw the first dunk you had last night. Rose crosses half court. They're about to. Rose is like, no, run this. All of a sudden, Obi comes looping around. They run a little handoff pitch. All of a sudden, quickly back screen. Like they didn't run stuff like this for him last year, and now they just decided to do it. And it's so interesting to me. I'm fascinated to like. I wish I was in a coaches meeting where they're like, you know what would be a great idea? We should definitely screen it all.
I was watching the college tape of this guy. I didn't realize he played in the school Dayton. They had a fairly successful season with him before we drafted him. He won. I think he won an award. And the thing that I probably should just stop talking about because it's never going to happen. But just like the notion of him as the five, we don't need to get into his defensive, what he would be as a five against good NBA lineups or even I guess backups NBA line. Like just the notion of that dude play with four, perimeter players and like, and if we really want to get crazy, if you constructed a lineup of, and again, I'm not even saying this is possible with the Knicks current roster, but just like where you could switch. I mean, I know it's the go-to, like switch everything. Yeah. Like, the Clippers, whatever. That stuff is easier said than done, but just whatever. The notion of him with four shooters and that would be fun.
There are a couple of plays that I've, cause I'm hopefully going to write about this, but where he's slipping a screen. He's gotten really good at slipping when he sees, and that's talking about quickly as a weapon. You basically have to trap that guy. Like you have to, if you let him walk into, if you're playing a drop and you let him walk into it, he had one last night, Sabonis dropped, it's pretty automatic. Like you can't do that, which means you got to bring the big up. So Obi's gotten so good at slipping it. He slips it, he gets a bounce pass, a little pocket pass from quickly. He's ready to rise up. Taj Gibson though, where's he? He's in the dunker spot because he's not spreading the floor. And so where's Miles Turner? He's ready for Obi. He's waiting there, and that's a premier shot blocker. And so you mitigate how explosive that could be by having a Taj Gibson in there. And as much as Taj Gibson seems to be dreaming of spacing the floor, I don't think it's going to really ever happen. So
I don't know. We doubt Taj at your own peril at this point. 30,
I would never.
I know you love him as much as I do. 36 years young.
So I mean, him as an Amari type small ball five, which is the comp, which was probably a crazy comp, but in terms of style of play, it's not that crazy. Like a guy who can slip a screen and explode to the rim the way this guy can, with four shooters around. That's what he was made to do. He was created in a basketball lab to be a small ball five, slipping screens and then creating havoc at the rim.
And by the way,
it probably won't ever happen on this team because it's just Julius Randle became Julius Randle. So I mean, it's really hard. It's hard to see where this goes.
That's as good. We'll finish up with Randle. It's as good a place to finish up as anyone because you just got my mind working. But like, it's not only like I don't remember. Maybe Amari had in it. I mean, Amari is one of the best power dunkers I don't fucking ever. But like, I don't know that Amari had this level of when Obi goes up and like midair, he like swirls it around and does the shit that he like. I just don't think there's a lot of guys that do that are that size and can jump that high. He's just. I don't know. He's so good transition. This is where we'll finish up so Julius Randle is on this lovely poster behind me. I've yelled at a lot of people this year who were mad at Julius, and I have mostly refused to engage in it because of what I really do feel he meant to the franchise and everything that happened last year. And, it's so interesting because, and I think if you're like, well, what's the biggest question about this team moving forward that doesn't involve like, will they trade for like whatever star? Although I guess it does kind of involve that, because this notion that you have this guy Obi here who's good. We don't, he's good. He's a good player and he's a hard worker and he'll probably get better. And if you think the shot's going to come around, then it's a really interesting conversation. And you have Randall, who's here and he does not seem to be, he's not going anywhere, nor should he go anywhere anytime soon. It's like, I don't know. I have not allowed myself to think about like, well, what is an alternate universe where like that, Randall was not on this team and like, what would he be moved for? And like, I don't know. I'm not there. I don't want to be there. I want to enjoy this team for what it is this year. And I want to have these conversations like later after the season. But, I don't know. Do you ever allow yourself to dwell into those dark holes?
Yes, absolutely. Because we're crazy. I mean,
we are crazy.
If Julius Randle, continues to shoot 34% from mid-range and 35% from three,
26 from long mid,
20, which is the real difference. 26 from long mid is the real difference.
That's 20%.
Basically the same from short mid.
He's making one out of every 5 shots fewer than from that distance that he was, and he lived from that distance last year.
If that continues and he doesn't severely alter the way he plays, then
maybe he's doing. He's starting to.
I think he showed. I think basically in every game there have been flashes of fulcrum movement. Julius Randle. I mean, last night it seemed like he was trying to prove a point because he would like catch it and then like throw it as hard as he can to the wing before a dribble handoff. He did this like 4 or 5 times. Did you notice? He would like one hand gun it over to Fournier and then like sprint into a dribble handoff. And it was like a little much and exaggerated, but I loved it because
I'm not complaining.
That stuff. I mean, the stuff he's shown a little bit with Kemba the last couple of games, like even in semi-transition, little handoffs, little screen, switching the screen, rolling, making plays like that. That is a really powerful player. The question is going to be, look, if he made 2 out of the 5 open threes that he missed last night, he had a great game.
Yes.
He's not making anything. I mean, he's just not making anything. And then there's like the 5-6 play series where it looks like he totally loses himself in frustration. And there's 3 turnovers in a row, literally 3 turnovers in a row and 2 missed rotations in a 6-play sequence. It's like, how is that? How do you allow that? Like, this is the leader of your team. And he just can't have moments like that. And he has too many, and he's had too many this year where body language is obviously terrible, but even just like, if the body language was bad, but he was like playing well when his body language was bad, I wouldn't care about the body language. But the body language and like the whole approach changes for periods of a game where he's frustrated, and it sinks the team. It just does. And he has the ball a lot, and he needs to make the decisions, and he can't have 2-minute stretches like that. And he had the end of the third quarter last night was inexcusable. You just can't. You can't derail your team like that. So I'm hopeful that like he's figuring this out. I don't think we give enough thought and credit to a guy who's had as chaotic a career as what he possibly have in terms of where he's been. Kobe to Anthony Davis to he broke his leg his first year. He comes to New York, it's a disaster.
It's an absolute shit show.
He becomes a Kawhi Leonard, like he had Kawhi Leonard type like shot distribution. That all of a sudden he's a mid-range like phenom out of absolutely thin air. And we're asking him again a year after doing that, finally cementing his place in the league.
Change it all.
Now we're saying, no, can you lower your usage like 7-8% and like become like more like Draymond Green? Like, that's a lot to ask. And
yet, if he does that, and again, I go back to what Tibbs is like, it's not just about, it's like, it's preserving Julius's body. Like if he plays center, like that's hard on him. And yet, and I feel like this has been the conversation since Julius Randle came into the league about how much 5 is going to, and again, it's not like he hasn't played a lot of 5. He's played almost half his minutes at the 5, I think, for one of the years. I forget which one.
New Orleans. Yeah.
That was the one New Orleans. But even before that in LA, he had seasons where he played a lot of 5. And that, even if it's 10 to 15 minutes a game, if they could just figure that out and it gets Toppin on the court for another 15 minutes, and suddenly now you have a guy who, instead of playing 16 minutes a game, is playing 26 minutes a game. And maybe that's Toppin's happy place. Maybe that's what he should be playing in the NBA. I just, it changes everything. And that's why I always go back to that fantasy. It's my fantasy. I'm not abandoning it until I'm forced to, but because this team became a lot of fun to love and a lot of fun to root for last year. So that's why I don't want to engage in those thoughts about like trade this guy, get rid of, bring in this guy. I'd love to see it work out somehow.
100%. No, I'm with you. And it's a fascinating collision of various things that kind of happened, and it's created. You have a coach like Tibbs who wants to play the way Tibbs wants to play. Randall coming out of nowhere, becoming an all-star, drafting Obi Toppin, probably to some extent because you never thought that Randall would become this kind of all-star. And now you have a collision of a coach who wants to have 48 minutes of rim protection, a blossoming player who needs more minutes and deserves more minutes, and the star who is trying to figure out how to adjust to a new situation. So it's frustrating. I think I've said this on Twitter many times. Julius Randle has earned our patience, if anything.
Yes, thank you.
To figure this out. I think he's clearly making a concerted effort to figure it out.
He cares. He definitely cares.
Yeah, and he deserves more time. And I think that's true of the entire starting unit. And that's the measure of hope that I have. I do think that unit's going to come to some balance here, even if it's not a closing lineup because of the defensive issues. I do think they're going to figure something out. And if Julius can become a real like offensive fulcrum, ball mover, playmaker, that's the ceiling for that unit. I don't think there's any question about that. Even in the spurts that he showed it, they've looked by far the best that they've looked when he's playing that kind of way. So we'll see.
Well, You said it well, so I'm not going to try to restate it, but just to close us out, I'm thinking about, like you were saying about the Knicks, like 2 through 10 is like indiscernible. You're looking at the East, and like Brooklyn's Brooklyn, and that sucks that we have to sit here and say that, but it is. But like, Milwaukee is, I mean, I guess you should still put them in that they've earned that, and they'll obviously be reckoned with come playoff time. But like, other than those 2 teams, the rest of the, like, if you told me the Knicks figured this thing out in the next couple of weeks and they made a run again into like kind of a home court advantage situation, I'd be like, okay, sure. And if you're like, yeah, the Knicks are battling for 10th and it's April, I'd be like, okay, that's an unfortunate turn of events, but also I wouldn't be like, you're lying. You're wrong. I think that's where we're at right now. And it's going to make for a fascinating season, in which you have to come on again and talk about more, because this was a lot of fun. I love talking hoops with someone who's so good at talking hoops as you are.
Thanks, John. It was a lot of fun. I would love to come on anytime. I've only been able to talk hoops through like the filter of Twitter with you, but it's really a lot of fun to be able to do it. Just kind of bouncing ideas off each other. So it was a blast. Thank you so much for having me on here.
My pleasure. And of course, before I let you go, can you remind the good folks at home where they can find you and your stuff?
Absolutely. Thanks. My Twitter handle is Ben Ritholtz NBA. My avatar is Ritholtzman. My name is not Rit for those who keep calling me Rit, although I kind of think it's great. So you can call me Rit if you want. I'm putting stuff out, as John said, probably too often, a lot, all the time. And I'm writing for the Strickland. I hope to have an article on everyone's favorite sophomore, or at least second favorite sophomore, Obi Toppin, soon enough. So keep an eye out for that. And just follow me and interact, because I love talking hoops with talking Knicks with all the crazy Knicks fans out there, even the ones that want to play Deuce McBride 29 minutes a game.
One day you're going to get your wish. Deuce McBride's going to play 29 minutes in an NBA game. And I look forward to watching that unfold. Seriously, Ben, you're an awesome follow. It's always a pleasure when I see your stuff out there. So everybody out there, if you're not already following Ben, please do so. You'll be happy you did. And of course, check out all his stuff over at the Strickland, where there's always something good going on. This was fun, my man.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.